Our view on eating healthy is so skewed because we tend to think about a diet plan that maybe we had followed before that felt really restrictive, or we followed a fad diet that just wasn't sustainable. And if it's anything like the ones that I've tried, it most likely included egg whites with some vegetables, some sort of supplemental protein powder, low carb, a bunch of vegetables, and it had you buying things that maybe you've never even eaten before. But I want to walk you through some simple steps that I took over the past year to finally figure out how to eat appropriately in a sustainable way that didn't require me to follow a strict meal plan. It actually is quite simple. And what it really comes down to is figuring out your own numbers and comparing it to what you're currently eating. But you have to figure out what you are currently eating. And I hear it all the time from clients. They think they know what it takes to eat better. They just can't do it, but they've never actually tracked their food and truly reflected on what their current eating habits look like. I started by using a macro calculator to figure out exactly what did I need in terms of protein and carbs and fat and calories, where the calculator allowed me to put in my own metrics, so it was specific to me. Once I had those baseline numbers down, I also had to track what I was actually eating. This took all of the guesswork out of the plan. And I didn't have to guess, am I overeating? Am I undereating? What am I not getting enough of? Or what am I getting too much of? I simply looked at the numbers that I was given and compared them to the numbers that I was eating. So once I had tracked my food and I had those macros down, the first thing I did was look at the most important macro, and that being protein. I didn't want to look at everything at once because I know that would lead to overwhelm within myself. So I definitely was eating less protein than what I needed to. So I simply started by increasing my protein and looking a little bit closer at foods that were high in protein, and not just the processed foods, but I really focused on whole foods because that is going to also help with our calorie intake. If we're eating a bunch of processed foods, yes, we might be getting the protein, but we're also probably getting a bunch of other junk with it that we simply don't need. Once I understood how protein made me feel by increasing it, and I was able to dial in a number that made more sense for me, not only according to the calculator, but also my own body, because a calculator can be very generic, then I had an idea of how that affected some other numbers. So again, I began tracking just sporadically to see what other adjustments could I make now in terms of the fat and carb numbers. In general, I was undereating carbs and overeating fat. And so this just gave me permission to eat a little bit more carbs. I think in most of our fad diets that we've tried before, it was really pushed onto us to have a low carb diet, and that meant fat loss. And so I had to get over that hump and realize that the carbs really are going to help me with energy. So worked on increasing those, and then I noticed that my fat was really high. And while I felt like the number the macro calculator gave me was too low, I did know I could make some improvements. And by tracking my food, I knew exactly which foods were a little bit high in fats. And unfortunately, one was bacon. And so I was eating bacon literally every day. Just got into it, and just seeing that number simply gave me motivation to back it down a little bit. And so I haven't stopped eating bacon permanently, but just to give you one example of one food that I did have to kind of cut back on. So if you haven't picked up on it by now, this is a months long process, and not a month, but a couple months long, because it does take time to figure out what you're eating, to figure out how do you plan this into your meals, what does it look like, and you also want to give your body time to adjust and dial into those adjustments. So at this point, my mindset had changed so much about how I view tracking food. I used to always think it took up so much time. It meant restriction. It meant that I'd have to stop eating certain things and focus on things that only fit into a certain box. And it really gave me more freedom and actually changed how I ate. And so I did something that I never thought I would do, and that is buy a food scale. And again, I didn't find myself actually taking food off. I found myself putting more food on. And a very simple example of this is I was eating rotisserie chicken and I wanted to get closer to 6 ounces. I put some on the scale and it was only 3 ounces. I didn't realize that I could eat a lot more than what I was. So now, yes, I do weigh and measure my food on days that I'm tracking really closely, just so I can get a better estimate on the days that I'm not tracking and measuring and weighing and get a little bit closer to the numbers that I should be hitting. Again, it's never perfect, but it's always about just making small adjustments so I can make this progress over time. By dialing into the accuracy of the numbers that I was given through the macro calculator, also looking at my calories and the big picture, it actually gave me more freedom in the decisions that I'm making when I am traveling or when I have to stop and get something quick to eat. I now know what I need in order to feel better the rest of the day, to have energy, to feel full, and to avoid some of the cravings that I maybe would have otherwise. Nothing has changed my energy, my body composition more than the nutrition. So yes, the exercise is definitely a huge part of it, but pairing that with good nutrition has made the world of difference. If nutrition still feels overwhelming and you just know that you cannot tackle this on your own, I help clients one-on-one walk through these exact simple steps, where they get custom advice based on foods that they're already eating, their goals, and the numbers that they need to hit. We do this without it feeling super restrictive, without giving exact meal plans, and rather small goals that they can build on over time. And so at the end, it feels like they have changed their habits when it comes to eating, no matter what situation or season of life they are in. If you want to learn more about getting into my coaching program, you can click the links below.